Good evening, ladies. How are you?
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Thank God. How's everything?
Baruch Hashem. All
Yosef,
is
very
well.
nice.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll get
Hello.
started in a second. Okay. There we go. So we're going now to 17, Yud Zayin. See if Yud Zayin. Okay, so it says like this. כתוב בסמ"ק, שאם נפלה טיפת דיו קודם שנגמר האות, if a little bit of ink fell before the letter was finished, that's what it says in the Torah. So then it says like this for the Bet Yosef. This language of the Samak. If a drop of ink fell before the letter was finished, and therefore it's not recognizable because of that ink. And then he took the ink. I'm sorry. That means that the ink was removed later on. It was removed, the ink. And then he says, also another case, which is similarly, it wasn't surrounded by parchment when it was originally made. Okay. That we say in a case like that, it's pasul. Also, then the ink was removed. So it says there it's called chak tochot, psula. So why is it pasul? Because when you remove the ink, we talked about this before, this concept, which means that you're creating the letters by erasing and not by writing. This is the problem. So when you erase that ink, you just created the letter by erasing, and that's not called writing. So therefore, that's why it's pasul. But it says if it was already written properly, and then it was written properly, and then the ink fell later on it. So there you can remove it. Why? Because there it was already written in a kosher way. So then it's not being written now. It's just you're removing the stain. Like it says in Yerushalmi, that's the language there. Yerushalmi hazeh hu bepek haya koreh. So it says this Yerushalmi is in Masechet Brachot, Halacha Gimel. So that's the way it is over there. So if it says over there like this, if the letters were mixed up, right? Some say it's kosher, veitane pasul, and some say it's pasul. Mande amar kasher, the one who says it's kosher, milamata, from below. Mande amar pasul milamala, the one who's saying it's pasul is from above. So what does that mean? If you go on Arzenu Tifartenu, that's talking about Eretz Israel, our land, whatever. Right, צריכה. ארצך ותפארתך צריכה. כתבו הרשב"א, we'll see what that means exactly. כתבו הרשב"א בתשובה. Rashba says in the תשובה, in the response, פירש דהכי כמה מלמעלה. This is what he's saying needs to say. מלמעלה, now we have to explain these words, right? They're not, the words are vague, they're not clear. Milamala pasul, right? From above, it's pasul. Why? Because since it hasn't been yet turned into a letter yet at all, and before that, the shape already got messed up with the ink. So now if he's coming to erase that ink, so that's considered to be like he's making the letter by erasing, which is not allowed. Because it was never a letter yet. This thing. Now he's erasing it. But if they're sticking below, if they're touching below the letters, for instance, the nun vav shel tifartenu of the word tifartenu, the last two letters, ve'artzenu, or this word, nun vav, achar shenigmerat tzurat ha'ot, once the letter was already finished and the shape was already written, hu shenidbaka, that's when it got now stuck together because the ink fell, the drop of ink fell there. So he says the beginning was kosher. So if he's coming now to erase it, it's not called making the letter by erasing, because it was already kosher in the beginning. So it says, therefore, even if he's not erasing at all, it's kosher. Right. So basically, now the fact that he's doing it by erasing is okay because it was already done as kosher before. That's what he's saying. Okay. So then he says, it's like Rabbi Zera who said, "Menachot kuf gimel amud bet kol harawi levila en bila me'akevet bo." Right. It says like this, that whatever is fitting to do a certain thing with it, right, we're talking about here. There's a concept like this in Menachot, which is the meal offerings, which are brought in the temple. So there, the rule is, that you have to mix the meal offering. You have to stir it, mix it up. So there's a rule like this, concept like this over there in those halachot, that if it's fitting to mix it, right, then mixing it is not going to make it not kosher, right? The fact that you didn't mix it is not going to make it not kosher. As long as it's fitting to mix it, that's going to be good enough. But he says these letters, right, your land and your glory, whatever, right, tifartecha, shakaf devuka b'emtzait regla. That the cup over here in this word is sticking to the leg is sticking to imatab with the tav. They're stuck together. These two letters. So it says there, it's a safek, it's a doubt. It's coming to tell you that even if it's not a letter until it's finished, until it's totally finished, and therefore there is a say. It's considered to be like below. Like the legs or the below the letter, kasher and kosher. The Ramban. It's also brought down the tshuva attributed to the Ramban. Siman Reish Lamed Vav. So it seems like the Samak was explained to Yerushalmi like this. So it says because of this, Katav im lo hayta mukefet gvil. He wrote that if it wasn't surrounded by parchment, when it was first done, the psula that we say it's pasul, and then the ink was removed. So there it's considered to be, as we said, right, that you're making the letter by erasing. Okay. Therefore it's pasul. So it means to say like this, right? That if the letter was sticking before to the other one before it was finished, That means the beginning of the making of it. It's not enough that he should separate between the two letters that are stuck. It's not going to help you. Why? Because it's going to be like you're writing by erasing. So therefore, what you have to do is erase the whole letter. And he's Beckett, which is sticking to the other one. So what does that mean? You got to write a new letter there. And by the way, he's talking here about Sefer Torah, because as we said, right, when it comes to Tefillin, you can't do this. You can't erase the letter and write a new one because it has to be done in the order, the proper order. So here he's talking about Sefer Torah, a little bit different. Anyway, right, but we're learning the concept here. And that which we said in the Yerushalmi, Gemara Yerushalmi, that all this letter was made in kosher way. It's not anymore disqualified. If it got stuck, the lamed misham. Samak, yeah. So it says lecha shenigmara ot. To where the letter was finished, right, that comes to exclude this. Right, comes to exclude this case where it was already written kosher, and then the drop fell in later on. So there, it's not a problem, as we said, we can erase it. So you can take away that ink, you can erase it. Not going to be pasul because of erasure. The old echtov. So it says, furthermore, I will write b'din Yerushalmi regarding this din of the Yerushalmi, samuch b'siyat d'ishmaya. It says close by with the help of God. Okay, very good. So then we go on. The Adoni HaRosh pasal gam hazeh. So says the Torah that his father, the Rosh, was even posel, was even saying that this is not kosher. Shekatav pek sheni gitin. Even this case is not kosher, according to him, because it says in the second parak of Gitin, Masechet Gitin. What is that? In Siman Yutet, the Rosh says this: Im nafla tipat deol letoch haot, that if a drop of ink fell into the letter, venaniket out, and now the letter is not recognizable. You can't remove the ink. You cannot fix it like that. So according to Rosh, even this you can't do. So what does that mean? Even though it was written kosher before, the fact that now it's messed up, you can't fix it anymore. According to the Rosh, even that you can't do. So according to him, this is also making the letter by erasure. Wow. Okay. That's also in the Truma. Siman Reshe. So it says if you have a drop of ink that fell in to the empty space of the bet, letter bet, and now it looks like a pay. As ensham bet aliyah or tipat deo. So it says then you don't have any, right? Ensham bet aliyah. That's not called a bet anymore. In other words, now you changed it into a pay. You changed it into a pay, so you can't change it back by erasing. That's what he's saying. Interesting. You can't erase it. It says it's like you're making a letter by erasing. It's a pasul. It's pasul. Like we're saying, Gitin. So he says he writes that the katav belo v'chakak umokela v'chak tochot o ta'a v'katav dalet b'kom resh. Well, let's say he made a mistake and he wrote a dalet instead of a resh, or bet makom kaf, or he wrote a bet instead of a kaf, and takanad imchot tag. So you can't fix it by erasing the crown. Letaken ha'ot, to fix the letter. It's also written also in the samag. Vagot Maimon Perek Aleph. So right, this is what we see that so it's a machloket between the other Rishonim who do say in this case it's kosher, and between the Rosh who says even this case is not kosher. So right again, right. So to sum it up, according to the Rosh, it's not kosher, even if it was written properly and then messed up, and then erased. Even that's not good. Okay, so let's see what's the halacha in Shulchan Aruch. So it says like this, Shulchan Aruch. If a drop of ink fell into the letter, so now the letter is not recognizable, right? You can't see what the letter is. So it says you can't fix it by erasing the ink. So now it's going to be recognizable because you erased that spot of ink there. Because that's you're writing by erasing. You can't do that. Pasul mishum debainan pasul. Why? Because we need the katav velo chakak. It says in the pasuk, right, that you should write the Sefer Torah and not to erase it, right? You can't make it by erasing it. That's what it means to say. Very good. So then he says, pasul mishum debainan katav velo chakak. I already said that. So same thing also applies if he made a mistake. Katav dalet b'makom resh. Let's say he wrote a dalet instead of a resh. So what's the difference, by the way, between one and the other? The dalet is square, right, and the resh is round. So once you make it into a dalet, you have to erase that edge, the corner, in order to make it round, to make it into a resh. This is the problem. Or bet b'makom kaf, or you made a bet instead of a kaf. So here also it would require erasure to bring it back to its original intention. And takana you can't fix it here either. It's considered to be you're writing by erasing. Very good. So now the question is like this, right? Did he paskin here like the Rosh or like the other opinion?
In between, it doesn't match either or.
Why is that? Why do you say that?
Because the Rosh says no, and then the other one says yes, but then this one says you may, kind of like you may, to make it recognizable, like the bet and the calf. But like not sure. He's kind of like in between both. That's how I feel.
Let me just repeat, these two opinions, right, to get it straight. So according to the first opinion, what we said is that if it fell during the original writing, before it was ever a letter, so then you can't erase it.
Yes.
Because it was never a letter to begin with. The Rosh says even if it was a letter, it's still no good. Right? Even if it was already a letter. That's the difference between the first opinion and the Rosh. But here the question is he talking about that the ink fell while you're writing it before it was a letter, or is he talking about afterwards? So I personally think that he's talking about it was never a letter. In other words, he's going to the first opinion.
It was never recognizable.
Right. The truth is, his language is not so clear. We'd have to check that 1 second. Yeah, it seems like you're going to the first opinion, but let me just go back to Bet Yosef 1 second. Make sure that we got the right idea here. Right. So you know what? I think we didn't read the tour, so I'm just going to read the tour. I think we have to read that. Right. So here's the tour. Right. Katuv Samak. It says in the Samak, She'im nafla tipat deo, that if a drop of ink fell, Kodam shenigmar ha'ot, before the letter was finished, but lo hayta ot nikret, and therefore it wasn't recognizable. V'chakach nitala deo, and then the ink was removed, or shelo hayta mokefet gbil, or was never surrounded. It wasn't surrounded by parchment. It's from the beginning. Pasul. Dehave kemo chak tochot. So it's considered to be like your writing by erasure. Aval im kvar hayta asuya ketikuna, but if it was made properly, and then the ink fell later, you can remove it. Right, as we said, right? And also the Rosh is the other opinion, he brings that, and then Sefer Tumah also agrees with that. Okay, interesting. Now let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch and see what we can glean out of this here. Which opinion did we Faskin like? Yeah, it's possible it's going like the Rosh actually. Let me see what the Achronim say here. There's Mishnah Berurah here. Let me see what he says about that. Here it is, right? And the Biur Halacha explains the Mishnah Berurah this issue. So you know what he says here? That the poskim seem to say, from the language of the Shulchan Aruch here, it doesn't really matter whether it was before or after. So in other words, he seems to be passing like the Rosh. Yeah, that's what it seems to be. In other words, he's saying that the poskim seem to say that that's the halacha, like the Rosh.
So that means if you wrote like this much and you get one drop of ink, that's no kosher.
So we're saying even further than that, right? That even if you finish the whole letter, it's still not going to help you.
But Kavod Harav, what about if it's surrounded by parchment? Does that make it
so
also?
right.
Also, so first we have to see if it's surrounded by parchment. Then where the drop fell, then it was before, after the letter, no?
So
After,
yeah,
before the letter
see,
was written?
the issue of being surrounded by parchment is a different issue.
Ah,
Here we're talking about really something else. We're talking about the issue that it got, you're making the letter by erasing it.
okay.
Two different halachot, two different rules.
And one more thing, and then depending on which letter it fell, like if it was the Dalet versus the Resh and so on, correct?
So here what
That's
we're saying is that
different.
any letter that you messed it up, by dropping ink over it, and then you erased it, it's going to be pasul.
Okay. Thank you.
Basically, that's what we're saying.
Thank you.
Yeah, interesting. So it seems to be like the Shulchan Aruch is passing like the Rosh. So you know why how you can see that? Because he doesn't say that it happened beforehand. He doesn't say that. So it means that it can happen anytime.
Okay. So like you said, it's a different halacha if it happened before or after, no? Or
Same thing,
regardless.
right? But here, according to Shulchan Aruch, it's the same thing.
Okay. Thank
Whether
you.
it's before or after.
Okay. Thank you very
So
much.
therefore, either way, right? Once you drop that ink on your letter and it gets messed up, you can't fix it by erasing it anymore. So what you have to do, if it's a Sefer Torah, you have to erase the whole letter and rewrite it. That would be the way to fix it. But as we said, right, with Tefillin, that's not going to help you because it has to be written in the order.
Okay.
Also, mezuzah, right? Mezuzah has to be written in the proper order. So therefore, once you have a problem like that with the Tefillin or mezuzah, you're done, right? That's it. So you gotta put it away.
And how long does it take you to write either or? Well, a Sefer Torah could take you months, no?
Oh, yeah, it could take years. Yeah.
It's to write it with it so meticulously, make sure you don't, or the mesusa or the.
Right. Yeah. These things require very meticulous work. Absolutely.
So on which one can we erase on the
Sefer Torah you can erase.
Okay, but not the other.
Right, not Tefillin and mezuzah. No. Okay, very good. That's the story here. Let's go to next one. Yudchet.
It's like make sure you do not sneeze when you're writing.
Okay, let's see. Right, so then we're going to go to the next one, which is also on the tour as well. So he says like this, the tour. Same thing, he says, similarly, the Rosh wrote, Mem petucha shenidbak b'tichata v'nistama. So he says, you have a mem, which is open. In other words, the regular mem, not the sofit. Shenidbak b'tichata v'nistama. So what happened was that it got closed up because the ink fell there, whatever. So he closed it by mistake. He shouldn't have closed it. So in a case like this, right, as we said, similar concept, that it's not going to help you to erase it and open it because you're making the letter by erasing. So he says, I'm sorry.
What letter did you say? It was the one that you're not supposed to close, and then if it.
The mem.
Okay.
So the mem is supposed to be open, but he closed it. So now he can't rewrite it by opening it, by erasing it. You can't do that. So okay. So so it says פתוחה שנדבק פתיחתה ומסתמה שאין מועיל לגרוד הדבק ופתחה בגלל דבק. Right, so you can't do by opening it. So what do you do? ובגלל הדבק אות לאות כתב שמותר. So it says, but to erase the two letters that are stuck together, that's allowed. So why would that be allowed, by the way? Because each letter is already full, it's fully written. So when you erase the part which is stuck together, you're not making the letter is already made. So this is the reason why he's saying it's allowed to do that. So it says when he starts to write it, what should he say? I'm writing for the sake of the holiness of the tefillin. It's not enough just to think about that. You actually have to say it. Also, it says all the names of God which you write in the Sefer Torah also need to have this declaration. If you're doing it for the sanctity of the name of God, it requires each name of God requires that. So writing a Sefer Torah can be quite tricky, right? You got to make sure every time you write God's name, it has to be sanctified. Okay, interesting. That's the story there. Let's see Bet Yosef. Yosef הזה כתב, אדוני הראש סל. So it says like this, wrote the Rosh, mem ptucha, right? We said, right, that he said that if you have a mem which is open and it got closed by mistake, right, we can't open it up by erasing. כן כתוב בתשובת כלל ג', that's what it says on the תשובה, in the Rosh, וכן כתוב בספר התרומה, also ספר התרומה, בסמ"ג, וממה שכתב רבנו, so that which Rabbeinu wrote, אין תקנה לגרוד הדבק, you can't fix it by erasing the place which it's closed with fatcha to open the letter. It says you can't do it that way, okay, but אבל אין צריך לגרדה כולה. But he says also you don't have to erase the whole letter here. וסגי כשיגרוד כל החתום ותישאר כצורת נון. So he says, then what should you do? Just erase the whole, right, the whole nose, right, whatever you want to call that, until it looks like a nun, you know, kifufa, like a bent nun, a regular nun, and then he's going to write whatever he erased. So there he's writing, he's not erasing. That will be fine. So it's also in Sefer HaTruma, Katav and Takana Limchok Hadvekot. He also writes that it's not enough to erase the sticky parts, the right, with a razor, because you're erasing. Also the Samag, also from there. Siman Memche, Mevoara B'Tshuvat HaRashba, also the Rashba, Vehi B'Tshuvat HaMiuchasot Ramban. It's all coming from the I'm sorry, it's coming from the Tshuva, which is attributed to the Ramban. Zal Siman Reish Lamed Vav, V'chen Toru Gadolei Ador Mari Ben Chaviv uMari Levi. So all these rabbis also passing like that. Ben his son. V'Iskimu Kol Chachmei Saloniki. So this is all the rabbis of Saloniki, right, which is in Greece, right, Salonika. Zichronam Livracha. They all agreed with that. Abraham to their words. But even though this rabbi he argued with them, B'tshuva, in a tshuva, so he says he wrote at length to prove he said no, not enough. You have to erase the whole letter. But he says we go like these rabbis, right? Because their logic makes sense. The thing is there, it says, according to this, Mash Kataba Rosh V'Tshuva, that was Rosh wrote in the Tshuva, Mem Ptucha, that we have an open mem. She needs Beka P'tichata B'nistama, that it got closed. It says you should erase the whole thing. You write another one. You have to say that since he erases until he nullifies the shape of the letter, it's considered like he erased the whole thing. Interesting. Rabbeinu be'elchot Sefer Torah. So it says Rabbeinu, laws of Sefer Torah. When he wrote the Tshuva Rosh, lo katav imchok kula. He didn't write that he should erase the whole thing. This is the language of the tour. Sham katav over there. Katana Adoni Avi Rorsal. It says my father says the Tshuva, the Rosh, writes in Tshuva, mem ptucha. If you have an open mem, she needs bekas petichata v'nistama. That it got closed by mistake. Ena mo'il ligrod. So it's not going to help you to erase now. Hadevek, to just the closed part, and to open it. So since he's not doing something with the body of the letter, ha'ot, with the body of the letter, he's just erasing. So what is he doing? He's just erasing the closed part. And by there, the letter is made by way of that. So it's like he's making the letter by erasing. That's what it says in the Torah. So it implies that also there that whenever you do a deed with the body of the letter, which was left over, even though he didn't erase the whole thing, it's considered to be like you're writing. If it says, according to this, if you made the resh like a dalet, so what should he do? Let him just erase the leg, or hagag, or the top, the roof, levad by itself. And then he comes back and writes it like a resh. It's good enough. Why? Because since he nullified the shape of the letter, it's not considered to be anymore you're writing by erasing. But it says there's still some right criticism about this. Why? Because it's not considered to be like an open mem. It's not the same thing really. That time, this is why? Because over there, Kevan Shetzurata Nun Sheba. So since the shape of the nun, which is there, Naseh Bechsher, it's made kosher. Kevan Shegarada Chartom. So once he erased the nose of the letter, Shedidbak, which is stuck to it, Katrol Kasher, and then he wrote it, it's kosher. Aval Gabe Aseh Asar Resh Ken Dalet. But when you make a resh like a dalet, Sheben Hagag Uben Ha'erech, which is between the roof of the letter and the leg. Nasu Pisul, that's where it's pasul. So it's possible that's not enough just to erase one side. But tzarich shegodat kulas, you have to erase the whole thing. So it seems also from Rashba. So it says, even though Shotat Tshuva he al pi Yerushalmi, that Tshuva is going according to Yerushalmi. Poskim pasku shelo k'div Yerushalmi. Poskim pas not like Yerushalmi. K'mo sheitbar b'samuch l'siyata d'ishmael, like we're going to explain later on. Haynu mishum desabre d'negia poseret ben lemala. That's because they hold that touching it puzzles it above, whether below or above. And also they say that when you the tikkun, the rectification of negia of touching, ot leot, when it's touching one letter to the other, they say that it's good, it's fine, you can do that. Right, but where the tikkun, the fixing doesn't help you, it's possible that they hold that whatever wasn't made in a kosher way, it's like the gold, you have to erase it. But Tama the mistaberhu, so he says it makes sense. Oh, there you go, right? So therefore he says the halacha is like that. So it seems like he's saying, right, bottom line, that you can't fix it that way. So what does that mean? You can't fix the resh or the daled by erasing only half of it. You have to erase the whole letter and rewrite it. That's the only way you can do it. Okay, we'll see that in the Shulchan Aruch, B'ezrat Hashem, but let me just, 1 second. Okay, anyway, let's go on. So it says, Katuv b'tshuvat Rabbi Yudah ben Arosh. There's a tshuva of Rabbi Yudah, the son of the Rosh. Sha'alta ayin shenichtav makom vav. Let's say there was an ayin written instead of the vav. Ma'u limchok ktsata v'tishaer vav. So can you erase some of the letter and remains a vav left over? You know, just by erasing like that. So teshuvah. So he says the answer is the dati zet talui b'mash katav adoni. So he says it seems that it depends on what my father wrote. Avi b'tshuva shemechalek ben chak tochot v'chak yerechot. It makes a differentiation between writing and erasing. Ki tzarich shechtov gufa ot v'lo sheimchok miktzat echad v'yish'er nish'ar ot echad ad kenishano. So basically, he's saying like this, right? The son of the Rosh. Here also, if you wrote an ayin, you can't erase it and turn it into a vav because you're making the letter by erasing. Right? It's clear. According to the principles that we already established. So that what Rabbeinu said regarding when two letters are stuck together. There, the Rosh said you're allowed to erase and separate them because the letter is already made. So you're not making the letter by erasing. It's just the two letters are stuck together. So says Maran, Shulchan Aruch Bet Yosef, Kalmar Samak Ichshir Haita Asuya Ketikuna. So Samak was Machshir If it was made properly, v'nafal ba'deo, and then ink fell into it. Again, right, as we said, the samak was machshir, he would say it's kosher when it was made properly, and then the ink fell later, as we said, right? Even though we don't go like that in the end, we went like the Rosh. And once he removes the ink, but he apostles where it's not surrounded by a parchment, it's from the beginning. But the Rosh said the opposite, right? Even more machmir. He says just the opposite, right? If it was made properly, nafal badeo, and then ink fell on it afterwards, v'natlo pasul. And then he removed that ink, it's pasul. So he says when you erase the ink, ot leot, from one letter to another, they're stuck together, hichshir. The Rosh said that's kosher. Right? Stam beseder tikun tefillin over there in this place. Velot chilek ben nidbeket mitchilatav nidbeket achar Hashem gimel. He doesn't make any differentiation whether it happened when it was being written or afterwards. Doesn't make any difference. It's kosher anyway. But it says going to Yerushalmi, shkatavti b'samuk that I wrote. He says close by. According to the way the Rashba explained, if the letter was stuck together before it was finished, not enough just to erase it, not going to help you. But if it was stuck together after it was finished, so then you don't even have to separate them at all, he says. There's no reason to separate them. They're kosher as is. That's what that says in Smag. The whole ot ve'ot. So it says every letter has to be surrounded by parchment from the four directions. If one letter touched the other, so then you can fix that. What does that mean? By erasing, separating them. That's not called making the letters by erasing. About Yerushalmi, when it says Yerushalmi, machshir negiata ot leot milamata. But in Yerushalmi it says that even if they're touching, they're okay. In other words, you have one letter touching the bottom letter under it. But if it's touching above, he says pasul. Interesting. So Yerushalmi says, right, depends on where it's touching, right? Is it touching below or touching above? If it's touching above, it's touching below, then he says kosher. In other words, in the place of the legs. But if it's touching on the top, where the roof is, right, the top, then it's pasul. And what about if they're touching in the middle? So there it's a doubt. I'm not sure. That's the end of that tshuva. Aval HaMordechai Perek HaKometz, but it says this rabbi, the Mordechai, Katab Yerushalmi Hazeh. So he says that he wrote the Yerushalmi, he brought the Yerushalmi, and afterwards he writes, Omnam b'Talmudenu, but he says in our Talmud, the Bavli, Lo mafrik ben nogea lemata, doesn't make any differentiation whether it's touching below or lemala or above. The apostles in any case. If it's not touching, if it's not surrounded with parchment, with from the four directions. Kataba Mordechai, says Mordechai, B'Shem Rabbeinu Shimshon, name Rabbeinu Shimshon, Shechem Katab Rabbeinu Elchanan. That's what it says also Rabbeinu Elchanan. Then Lismoch al Yerushalmi, don't rely on the Yerushalmi. It's Tzarich lekef ben lemala ben lemata. You have to have parchment, whether it's below or above. So, okay. V'chen pasak b'sefer Truma. That's what it also says in the Truma. She'im nogat ot lechaverta. That if one letter is touching the other, milamala, or from above, or milamata, or from below, pisula. Either way it's pasul. But you can fix it. You know what does that mean? You gotta erase it, right? You gotta scrape it out. That's not called chak tochot, making a letter by erasing, because it's already made. You know, you're just detaching them. Right? They're just attached. right? וכן כתב באגד מימון. That's what it says in אגד מימון. וכן כתב עגול בשם מהר"ם. That's what it says over there. וכן יראה שהוא דת הריף. The Rif also seems to hold this way. ורמב"ם בראש and all these rabbis שלא הזכירו הירושלמי הזה, that they didn't mention this Yerushalmi at all, כלל. וכן הלכה, that's what halacha it says. Wow. So halacha is not like the Yerushalmi. ואיך דנגעו רגלי ההי והקוף. So it says, what about if the legs of the hay and the kof are touching the mala above? Shu pasul. It's pasul that Rabbi poskim. According to Rabbi poskim, most poskim pasul. Kemo sheitbar basiman lamed vav. Like it's going to explain lamed vav. The siyat dishmei katav Mordechai bekometz. Says Mordechai over there. The law mehane im ifridan besakin doesn't help you to separate them with a knife to erase it. Katav shechazar bo haratz. But he says, then this rabbi retracted, changed his mind. He says it was kosher. The Gaon Ma'ari Kolon says this rabbi katab b'simon tzadik chet shebeor zarua ve'yored de'ah. So he says in this book Or Zarua, mashma desfila lehu the lo mehane dekidibei haratz doesn't help like the words of Haratz. The first words. Yechen katab agur. Like that's what it says in Agur b'shem Maharam. The lo mehane, they also it doesn't help to separate them. Also the Rashba writes this. Regel akof hadabuk legordan mudin regel. So he says if the leg of the kof is stuck, right, sticking, want to gordin regel, we erase it. The chazrin v'kotvin, and then we write a new letter. So he says you don't have to erase the whole letter. Because the top is the roof is written properly. That's what it says in the Ramban, also Tshuva Ramban. Also there, Tumat Deshen, Siman Emchet. The Tama de lo mehane aprada. So he says the reason why separating doesn't help you, when these two letters are touching each other. What's the reason why? The malo above. Just like it helps you with other letters where it's just stuck together. Because over there, in those cases, the problem is not with the shape of the letters. The letter is written properly. Right? But when it comes to these, the hay and the kuf, the two legs, so there the problem is that it's pasul in the body of the letter. In other words, it's not written properly. Because they're touching. The fact that they're touching makes it not written properly in this case. So he says, what about if the leg of the aleph touched the roof of the aleph, or penei aleph, or the face of the aleph, bifnim, begag, inside, on the roof, or which is under it, similar to this Ketuba Agur, it says also on the Agur. Kulan Psulin, they're all Pasul. You can't fix it by erasing it, or by afrada, or by separating it. That's considered to be like you're writing by erasing. Upashutu says Pashut, simple. But he says if you erase whatever was done improperly, Sagi, that's enough. Like I wrote close by, it says regarding the leg of the hay and the kof, they're touching above. He says, however, right, even if you already wrote it in front, you can't fix it anymore. Why? Because it's written out of the order, right? So in other words, he's telling you, right, as you said, when it comes to tefillin and mezuzah, they have to be written in order. So if one letter is bad, you can't just erase the letter and rewrite it, right? That's not good. So the whole thing has to be thrown away, right? Unfortunately, right? But as we said, right, with the Sefer Torah, you can do that. Not with tefillin and mezuzah. Okay, let's see where we're going here. And im guf yud yudei ve'ain ve'apei ve'atzadi nugim beguf ha'ot. So it says, what about if the body of the yud, the shin, ain, pei, tzadik, they're touching the guf ha'ot yoter makom dibukan. They're touching the the letter, which is more in the place of the touching. We're going to talk about that in the Lamed Vav. So we'll leave that for later. So let's do the Shulchan Aruch and we're done, right? This is a lot of laws over here. Okay, let's see how the Shulchan Aruch arranges this. Let's go step by step. So it says like this. So he says, in any case, I'm sorry, not min kol makom. Mem, ptucha. If you have an open mem, right, that it was closed by accident, right? You can't just erase it and open it, right? Because you're making the letter by erasing. Right? That's called haktochot. Mishum dehave haktochot. So how do you fix it then? What do you do? So what you should do is erase the whole nose, right? That hook, right? The hooky thing, the hook, right? And it's gonna now look like a nun, kifufa, a regular nun. And then he's gonna write what he erased. He's gonna rewrite it. But as we said, this is the way to fix it. But now we're going to a different issue, right? Which is what? But if the resh was made like a dalet, it should be machmir in this case. It's not enough just to erase the leg or the gag or the roof. And then to read like a resh. Because it's all done improperly. The whole thing is done improperly. So it's not going to help you just to do half of it. So therefore, what should you do in a case like that? You have to erase the whole letter, right, from top to bottom, and then you write a new resh. That's the way to fix it. Then if two letters were stuck together, right, that's what we talked about now. Whether it was before it was finished or after it was finished, right? Pasul is pasul anyway. They're sticking together. So, but if he erases it and separates them, kasher, it's kosher. That's not called writing by erasing. Why? Because the letter was written properly, just it was stuck to one to the other. Doesn't mean the letter is no good. Right? So then he says, but what about if the legs of the hay and the kuf are touching on the roof, on the top? So then you erase the leg and rewrite it. You don't have to erase the whole letter. Because the top was written properly, the roof. But if the leg of the aleph, the gag aleph touched the roof of the aleph, right? Or penei aleph, or the face of the aleph, bifnim, inside, the gag shetachtea, and the roof which is under it. So there, pasul, it's pasul. You can't fix this one, right? In this case, by erasing it. Because you're making it by erasing it. Right? So what you have to do is erase the whole thing, the whole letter, and then rewrite it. So by the way, why is it in this case that you have to rewrite it? So the reason is because here, the fact that they were stuck together made the letter look not complete, right? Like not properly formed. It wasn't properly formed. So in a case like that, when by being stuck together, it's not formed properly, therefore you can't fix it by erasing it, because you're making the letter by erasing. So says the Rama, "V'chen hadak hadin biyodeh ashin v'atzadik v'ayin v'apeh." So it's the same thing also applies with all these letters, right? The yud of the shin and the tzaddik and the ayin v'apeh. All these letters have a yud inside of them. That's the way they're written in Sefer Torah. They have like a yud, you know. It's like it's a group of things that are written, like shaped together, put together, you know, assembled together. So he says, in a case like that, if they're touching the body of the letter, right, you'll tell me makom tevukam, more than the place they're supposed to be together. If they're touching more, so then what you do in a case like that? Same thing, right? You got to erase it and rewrite it. That's what the Ramah says. So why is that? Because they're also, in this case, right, what the Ramah brings here, that the yud is touching the goof of the body of the letter, it doesn't look like the proper letter. So therefore, when you erase it, you're making it by erasing it. Okay, very good. We're done. That's it. Okay, very good. Wasn't easy, these halachot, huh?
This one, no.
Okay. You know, I would recommend on your free time, you should review this class.
Because of the ayin, you mentioned the ayin and the bab being together, but I don't see how that ayin.
You know what I meant to say? Not the ayin and the vav are together, but what we said is that the instead of writing a vav, he wrote an ayin.
Uh-huh.
So he can. The question is, can he erase it and make it into a vav just by erasing?
Oh, okay.
You understand? You understand?
Yes, yes. So, but I'm gonna still.
He was supposed to write a vav, but he wrote an ayin instead.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so review this class, and we'll give you a passing grade. You know, we'll let you slide.
I have a question. So this
Yes,
erasing can be done only one time, yes?
I'm sorry?
The erasing, you know, depending on the letter and everything that we just discussed, can be done one time only, correct?
No, you can do it in a Sefer Torah. You can do it many times. As we said, right?
In letter?
Even with Tefillin, you can do it many times. But the thing is that once you finish the Tefillin, you know, you can't now go into the middle and erase the letter.
In the middle of the whole class.
Right,
No?
because that will be in the wrong order.
Okay. Oh, okay. I see.
The
Okay.
Sefer Torah, you can do that, but not with the Tefillin, not with the mezuzah.
Okay. Got it.
So
Thank
don't
you.
try that at home. Now, don't open up your mezuzot and start playing around with that. All right.
You know, the Yad Shamayim I have to have, you know, this was made of Shamayim, you know where, down there.
All right, God bless you. Have a Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch.
Thank you
See you
so much.
tomorrow. All the blessings. Bye. Be
Thank
happy.
you.